Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to season 2 of the Niqabi Diaries podcast, a platform dedicated to sharing the stories of the women behind the veil. This season, we will be speaking to more Muslim women from all walks of life as we continue to discuss their deep and intimate reasons for wearing the niqab. The Niqabi Diaries, our experiences, our perspectives, our voices. I'm your host, Samar, and thank you for listening. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, sister. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair, sister, for joining us today on the Niqabi Diaries. Sister, could you please introduce yourself for the listeners and tell us a little bit about what you do, inshallah?
Assalamu alaikum. So my name is Khadija and I am a RTT therapist, or known as rapid transformational therapist. It's a hybrid form of therapy that uses hypnosis as a way to help and cure any problems, any childhood traumas that my clients have, and help them to get rid of it so that they can live a better and more fulfilling and productive life.
Alhamdulillah. And how long have you been doing that, sister?
It's been a couple of months actually, so I think about 6-7 months coming up to it.
Okay.
And inshallah I've got a few more months to go, so hopefully it's all plain sailing from here.
Inshallah, mashallah. And what was you doing before that?
I used to write books. Actually, I was in between a few different things. So I think prior to coming doing the hypnotherapy course, I was actually publishing books. So it was
Really?
one of my hobbies.
Mashallah.
But it was just something that I remember I wrote down as a goal that I wanted to publish my own books. And I think I did 2 separate books, and it stopped for a while. And then by the qadr of Allah, I came through to doing the course that I'm doing now. So I ventured out in a few different things, I think, just to find what it is that I was comfortable with, or what it is that I really wanted to do. And I guess that gave me a sense of purpose.
Okay, so what kind of genre are your books?
I had sort of poetry books. So from a young age, I was very much into writing short stories or imaginative stories. And then that developed and grew into writing short poetries. So
Okay.
I think the first book that I did was a very small book. It was about 33 pages, which I did through self-publishing. And then I took a break for a year, and then I started writing all over again and decided to publish a much more thicker book, but this
Okay.
time with an actual publishing agency.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this was something that I wanted to do, so sort of to build my confidence up, but also achieve one of the goals that I had. So alhamdulillah, I got that
Alhamdulillah.
done.
Alhamdulillah, mashallah. So are your books available online?
They are available online. Yes, they are.
Okay, cool. Might put a link in the description if you're happy with that, inshallah.
Inshallah, of course.
Okay, cool. So can you get and tell us a little bit about your Islamic background, sister, and how you came to start wearing the niqab?
Um, so when I was in college, I remember the first year of college, I started wearing the abaya. I mean, I've always had the hijab on since I was 12.
Mm-hmm.
And then in college, when I was 17, I really, really wanted to cover up and dress more modestly and wear the abaya. And the thing with me is sometimes when I make a decision and I decide that I want to do something, I sort of just go with it.
Yeah.
I don't really think about it as much. And I play around with the idea, and then the next day I'm wearing it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what the abaya was first foremost. I sort of had the idea I wanted to wear it, and then the next day I remember just asking my dad to make one, which he did.
All right, mashallah. So your dad is a tailor?
He's a tailor, yeah. So that
Mashallah.
came in very handy and convenient. So I remember on the Monday I just wore the abaya and I just went with it. And I honestly thought that is where I would stop in terms of the Islamic dress code. I wouldn't go any
Mm-hmm.
further than that. But when I hit 18, um, I started playing around with the niqab. My mom had a niqab in her cupboard, so I used to take it out and just try it on and just see what it felt like and see how comfortable I was wearing it, if I would ever take the step to actually go out and wear one. And I think I remember it was the weekend, and I had tried it on, and I remember thinking, this is the most beautiful look in the whole wide world.
Mm.
And I wasn't scared at all. When I looked at myself, I thought, I don't understand why people are so scared of such a look, and why they think this piece of clothing is something to fear. So the idea kept playing around with my head, and I kept going back and forth, I think over a period of 2 days. And the next day I got up, I got ready for college, and without thinking about it, I put it on and I walked out the door. And I didn't tell my parents, I didn't tell anyone in my family that I was wearing one. I don't think I even knew, to be honest, that I was consciously aware of what I was doing. I think I just put it on and went out
Fine.
and just thought to myself, let me just see how I sort of get along or how it feels. And I was walking the street and I remember thinking, first of all, I remember thinking, I love how I can see what everyone else is doing and I can see everyone else's face, but no one can see what I look like.
Mm-hmm.
But then as I continued walking, I remember thinking, I feel so free and I feel at peace
Alhamdulillah.
and I feel so content with the way I look and the way I'm dressed. So the first sort of couple of months, because I had a bit of an on and off relationship with it.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was in college, I loved it. I mean, after that first day, I stuck to it. I wore it completely everywhere I went. And I remember my mom actually, she advised me. She said to me, I think it would be better if you did take it off. It wouldn't, as in for your own safety, I think now is not the right time for you to be wearing it. And I
Mm.
remember at the time there was a lot of Islamophobia going on.
Yeah.
So that was probably what was influencing her decision and her advice to me. And I said to her, no, I'm actually very comfortable with what I'm wearing and the way I'm dressed, and I don't feel afraid of anything at all. I don't feel anything's gonna happen to me. And if it comes to a point where I do feel afraid and I feel like I can't wear it anymore, then I will take it off. But at this moment in time, I'm very content and I'm very at peace with the way I'm wearing it. So
Alhamdulillah.
my earliest memories were very, very happy ones.
So, mashallah, like you mentioned that you first tried the niqab from your mum because your mum had some in
Yeah,
her, one in
yeah,
her cupboard.
yeah.
So had you seen your mother wearing the niqab before, or is it something that she used to wear occasionally? Or
No, I remember she purchased that one from when she went to do Hajj.
right.
So she came back and she brought along two of the niqabs with her. But I
Mm-hmm.
remember the ones that she had on, you know, the part that covers the face,
Yeah.
it was a very light chiffon material.
Mm-hmm.
So when the sunlight hit, you could still directly see my face.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, if I do go out wearing this one, it's not appropriate because my face is still clearly visible.
Mm-hmm.
So what I had to do was get a separate hijab
Mm-hmm.
and tie that around my face.
Yeah.
So there was some sort of cover underneath, and then I had to put the niqab on.
Okay.
I did that for about 2 weeks, and it felt at first it felt really suffocating
Mm-hmm.
walking around like that, but the content that I felt alongside sort of outweighed how difficult it was.
Okay.
And then
Alhamdulillah.
eventually I purchased the single ones that you just sort of tie up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I just sort of continued and then moved on to those.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. So what about your dad then? You said he made your first abaya for you. So what was his kind of reaction to you
Reaction.
wearing the niqab?
Um, I don't think they had any objections towards me wearing the abaya at all because I think they saw it just as a very long dress.
Yes, yeah.
It's one of those things. But I do remember with the niqab, it was just a little bit apprehensive and reluctant and trying to tell me what they thought was best. But
Mm-hmm.
as far as I remember, there was no problems with the hijab and the abaya
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. And so you started wearing the niqab when you was in college still, or
Mm.
had you moved on to another study by then?
Yeah, so when I was thinking about going to university,
Mm-hmm.
I knew that the course that I was doing required a lot of travel,
Yeah.
which meant using the underground. And it was then when I decided, or when I was contemplating with the idea of whether I should take it off or not. Um, I remember I really didn't want to take it off.
Mm-hmm.
I was really disheartened at the idea of having to take it off, but I knew at the same time that it was better for me to take it off now because I wanted to feel a sense of safety and security when I was traveling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I did have ideas playing in the back of my mind. What if one day I faced some sort of verbal attack or something did happen, and the way my course was designed and my lectures were designed, I would be coming home some days around 7, 8 o'clock in the evening. And I knew that was something that my mom would also worry about. So, I mean, it was a decision that I had to sort of really think about and decide, is this the best time? And I made my intentions and I said to myself, I'm not taking it off because of any other reasons except that I'm just thinking of my security and my safety at the moment. So
Yeah.
I did take it off after. So I think when I was about 20, I took it off, and it was purely because I wanted to put my safety first for travel purposes.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. So have you ever experienced any kind of abuse at all
Um,
wearing it?
Not towards it. You know, funny enough, it never happened when I was wearing my niqab, but I remember when I was in college, I was coming home after my lessons had finished, and I was taking my usual route, and I was walking in the normal direction that I was going towards, and there was this man, and for some reason he just caught my eye, and he was leaning against one of the bins, and it was a really hot summer's day, and I remember thinking, out of all the places he's leaning against, why is he leaning towards the bin? Because
Hmm.
it's hot, and surely he can smell whatever there is. But what made me stare at him was the way that he was staring at me. So I noticed that he was glaring at me up and down, and obviously looking at what I was wearing. So as I continued to walk towards him, I created a bit of a distance between us both. So just in case something was to happen, I could react and I would be as further away from him as possible. Um, as I walked past him, I could feel that his gaze was still upon me, and that's when he turned to me and he goes, "You should go back to your country." And I
SubhanAllah.
looked back and I said, "Excuse me?" And he goes, "You should go back to your country, Osama bin Laden's daughter."
Wow.
And that, when he said that to me, I don't know what happened, but I was in such a state of shock that I turned around and I started walking as fast as I could. And I could still hear him from the back yelling at me and saying to me, "Go back to your country, go back to your country." And I think I turned back and I quickly just said, "Oh, whatever." And then I carried on walking. But that fear stayed with me until I got home.
Mm.
Um, and that 15-minute walk felt like the longest walk I'd ever done, because I kept looking
SubhanAllah.
back, thinking that anytime now, this man is going to come behind me. He's going to follow me home and he will do something. So as I continued walking, I could feel this rush of emotions in me, um, like a mixture of anger or feeling upset or like I wanted to cry. And then I reached home and I didn't tell my parents what happened. I didn't tell any of my siblings what happened. I went straight upstairs to my room and I just burst out crying. I was in
SubhanAllah.
tears, and the first thought, subhanAllah, the first thought that came to me was, had you not been wearing what you were wearing today, none of that would have happened.
Mm.
Had you not been out in your abaya and in your hijab the way you were dressed, he would not have said anything to you. That was my first thought. And I sat there for the next 2 hours thinking that I can't wear this anymore.
SubhanAllah.
I can't go out in my abaya anymore, because if I do, uh, today's verbal attack could end up being a physical attack, and I won't be able to do anything about it. And I think now looking back at that moment, it was really disheartening that I thought I was the problem,
Mm.
whereby I thought I was the one that needed to change. And I remember sitting down and thinking, okay, when Monday comes, you're going to take your bite off and you're going to go back to your normal clothing. You're not going to continue wearing this. Your hijab also, it needs to be changed. I mean, there was nothing wrong with it in the first place, but
Mm.
I was sat there thinking I needed to change it up and probably do it in a way that would attract less attention towards myself.
Mm.
And I knew that I didn't want to take it off, but I kept playing with the idea and the thoughts I had to, because I needed to put my safety first.
SubhanAllah.
And the
So
money,
this experience happened to you and you wasn't even wearing the niqab, right?
no, at all.
SubhanAllah, because this is something like a lot of sisters feel that obviously that, like you mentioned before, your parents even thought that wearing the niqab would put you at some kind of risk, but
Yeah.
the hijab in general, a lot of sisters just wearing the headscarf. I mean, I've known of sisters, you know, where I live here, who've been
Yeah.
attacked just for wearing a headscarf and not wearing the niqab at all.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so it's upon like just looking different, just being that somebody who looks different, and you look like you're, you know, not, if you're not white as well, especially,
Mm.
you can be a target of hate crime,
Yeah,
basically,
definitely.
because you are different. You're not you know, whatever that person perceives to be the norm, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, and there's, unfortunately, there are cowards like that around, and especially, like, I just don't understand, like, as a man, if you consider
Mm.
yourself to be a man, how can you choose to, like, you know, show your kind of you vent your direction of hatred towards a female, especially a young girl, you know,
Exactly. Yeah,
somebody who's
exactly.
obviously vulnerable. You know, so it's very cowardly to do something like that, and it shows their lack of masculinity as well, actually.
Yeah,
People like to use
definitely.
the term toxic masculinity, but I don't
Mm.
consider that to be masculinity at all. If you feel that you
No,
can
neither do I. And like,
use your
it was
kind of
just,
position of
and I
power to
think you could
oppress someone.
tell, yeah. And the way he was glaring at me, you could tell that he knew, you know, I mean, what harm could I be doing? Do you
Exactly.
see? And I was just walking across it, and that comment, it stayed with me, and I don't know why I felt so powerless when he said that. I mean, it was just a comment, but it was the way he said it, and I remember looking at his face and the sort of frown that he had, and I just remember thinking back to hearing countless stories of other women who've actually suffered much worse,
Mm.
who've gone through so many other things. But it was just the idea that a small comment by someone and how it can change your mindset and how it changes how you view yourself and how you view things.
SubhanAllah. I mean, it's terrible, because obviously they're trying to, like, intimidate you. And what I find so ridiculous, you know, especially like the comment that he made to you as well, and similar comments that I've had like this, calling you Osama bin Laden's daughter. And I mean, I remember one time somebody walked past me and said Al Qaeda, and I just thought to myself, like, you're stupid, because if you believe that, you know, but from watching the news, that Osama bin Laden and Al Qaeda are terrorists, then shouldn't you shut your mouth when you see me? Because you
Mm.
should be scared.
Shouldn't you be afraid? Let's be
Exactly.
real.
But the reality is, you know, that there isn't any fear coming from me. You know, you're so, and you're
Whatsoever,
trying,
exactly.
you feel in a position where you can intimidate me, because if
Yeah.
you was really genuinely afraid, you wouldn't say anything. That's the reality. But so
Mm.
this is the kind of, like, you know, situation that we have, which doesn't make any sense. Like, it's a contradictory situation, you know, like,
Yeah,
people make these kind of foolish comments, and you just think, like, have you ever taken the time to sit down and think to yourself, you know, after making these kind of foolish comments, you know, based on your racist views and opinions, like, if they actually make any sense at all? You know,
yeah.
there's no logic in them.
And is there any substance to what you're actually saying, or is it
Exactly,
simply based
exactly,
on what you're watching and allowing to be fed into you to then come up with this perception and this idea and then think it's okay to then go out and say whatever you feel like to innocent bystanders,
exactly.
basically?
Judging people, you know. And it's like,
Yeah.
you know, since this whole kind of, like, you know, the Islamophobia movement, I don't know
Mm.
how to describe it, you know, with the kind of you know, linking women who wear the niqab, for example, to, like, this kind of ideas of terrorism and stuff like that, which the two of them aren't synonymous. They don't actually go together.
Mm.
But it's like
Yeah.
that we, you know, niqabi has been highlighted as being part of, you know, this, you know, heinous and disgusting,
Mm.
you know, thing. And it's not the same, you know. We're just simple people that live like everybody else, you know. And whether you agree with how we dress or not is irrelevant. It doesn't mean that we are doing something bad.
Yeah. I remember those comments when Boris Johnson actually equated to a Muslim woman in a niqab to a letterbox.
Yeah,
And I remember that, and I thought, how is it that this has become so normalized for Muslim women to be continuously attacked and made at the forefront of what is wrong with Islam,
mm-hmm.
and how we are in need of being liberated and we are so oppressed and we are looking out and seeking out freedom. So I remember sitting down and thinking, this isn't the right way to go about it. I mean, yes, there is something that needs to be done, and we just simply don't have our voices heard. So, for example, when the man made that comment, now looking back, I just think how hard it would have been to approach and ask and educate yourself and find out why a Muslim woman dresses the way she does, rather than allow yourself to just lead and be led by what it is that you're hearing and what it is that you're seeing, especially in the media.
Yeah, subhanallah. And I just think like it's amazing that they say they want to free us from oppression, but nobody wants to talk to us.
And actually question and
Yeah,
get to know us and understand what it is that's behind the veil.
exactly. They don't want to talk to us. They don't want to ask us any questions. They're just making an assumption and then just speaking on our behalf, when the reality they're not speaking on our behalf because they don't know what we want. That's the
Mm,
reality. Because at the end of the day, every woman in every culture, in every space of time, has at one point or another been oppressed. But also, there's
yeah.
been men who have also been oppressed too. So it's not something that is unique to women. You know, oppression is nothing to do with gender at the end of the day. Okay, so that's
Yeah.
one thing. But then this whole kind of idea that, oh yeah, Muslim women, because we're covered, that we must be oppressed. But at the same time, you're saying that you're trying to free us, but without actually inviting us to even speak and give our opinions. And the few occasions that we are invited to give our opinions, you cut us off. You don't let us express ourselves because you don't really want to hear what we have to say. That's
Yeah, and you don't like what it is that we want to hear, or what it
exactly.
is you don't like to hear what it is that we want to say, and because it doesn't fall in line with your views and your beliefs and what you're trying to go out and propagate to society, hence you cut us off, or you don't invite, or you sort of turn the tables. I just find it really ridiculous.
It is, subhanAllah.
And whenever anyone says to me an opinion of the hijab and so forth, how we growing up we always used to hear hijab is my right, is my choice, and so forth. um I just say no. Hijab is a commandment of Allah. Allah commanded us
Yes,
to wear the hijab, to observe it.
exactly.
We have the free will, whether we choose to or not. It's as
Hmm.
simple as that. There is no hijab is my choice. I decide whether I want to. No, no, no. It's a commandment. You
Yeah,
have the choice whether you obey that commandment or not. Similarly, the way salah is a commandment, you have the free
exactly.
will to decide where you pray or not. It's as simple as that.
Exactly, because that's the thing with Islam. Like, you can't, just because you're not doing it, you can't say that it's not part of the religion.
Yeah, exactly. And trying to water it down, or trying to pick and mix and see what parts make us feel happy that we think we can adjust to, but then the parts that we can't, we try and sort of bend it a little bit.
Hmm. SubhanAllah. May Allah rectify our affairs.
I mean,
I mean. So, sister, do you
yeah.
feel that sisters who wear the hijab get treated differently from sisters who wear the niqab? Now that we're talking kind of about that.
To be honest, um, before wearing the niqab, I would have said no. I would have said I think they get treated differently. But after wearing it, I think they do. And
Hmm.
that's purely because I've had other sisters telling me that they feel intimidated by people who do wear the niqab.
SubhanAllah.
Sometimes I think there's this vibe that comes off, or this sort of feeling that comes off, that women in niqab, they're very reserved, and they are on a higher level of piety and righteousness than everyone else.
Mm,
There's just this general assumption, and they're not as welcoming, and they're not as understanding as a sister who wears the hijab only would be. And I remember thinking, that's not how I want it to be. And when I do have conversations with people, or people who are in the mosque, or just outside on the street, they would say to me that it's quite we feel a little bit uncomfortable speaking to or communicating with women who are in niqab, just because we deem them sometimes to be of a higher spiritual level than everyone
mm,
else. But I think if it comes in terms of things like oppression, I mean, I've only heard, I'm sure Islamophobia is widespread everywhere, but most of the times I've heard of sisters in niqab who have had it pulled off, who
SubhanAllah.
have had things thrown on them, who have been physically and verbally attacked for wearing their niqab. But then sometimes I do hear stories of sisters who are just in a hijab and they've had it pulled off, or they've been kicked behind, or they've been followed home, or they've had harassments, and sort of insults and threats thrown at them.
SubhanAllah.
So I think it's because I think it's definitely come to a point where it doesn't matter what you're wearing, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. But you know,
There
like
is no sort of
with what you're saying, and obviously I've heard
mm,
a lot of sisters say this, and you know, we're both living in
mm,
the UK, so I think
yeah,
we've kind of like on the same kind of wavelength when it comes to these kind of, you know, the ideas and things that we hear, especially in the UK,
yeah,
revolving about sisters who wear the niqab being on a so-called higher level of piety or whatever. I wonder if you know, brothers, for example, who have the beard, a full beard, or brothers who, you know, wear like more Islamic looking clothing, thobe and like things like and kufis, etc.,
mm,
like on a regular basis. I wonder if other brothers have this kind of perception of them, that they're on a high level of piety and therefore they feel anxious with about talking to them or approaching them.
or approaching them. I
But
think it does. I think sometimes with the way you dress, it
mm,
naturally comes across as someone who's a lot more focused on their deen,
mm,
someone who's a lot more focused on, you know, that closeness to Allah and engaging more in acts of worship. But I don't think it should ever come to a place where we give off a vibe where we're not welcoming
yeah, of course.
or we are not approachable or so forth. I think it's that same thing again of sort of talking and getting to know someone. But I remember with myself, when I did first start when I did first start practicing, I really thought that the way if I was to change my clothes and if I was to wear the niqab and the abaya, that would automatically improve my worship and
Mm,
it would strengthen my worship. And in some cases, yes, it does. But as you sort of go through life and you carry on and you grow up and you mature, you realize that it's actually all about the heart,
yes.
about how your heart is and how much attention you pay to the heart, basically your inner characteristics rather than what is on the outside. Because there were so many times when I struggled with worship and I thought to myself, how is this possible? Because I cover up,
Mm,
I wear the hijab, I make sure that I'm modest where I go, yet my heart feels at times like it's very low on worship. And some days I feel like I'm very distant from Allah. And I definitely felt that when we returned from Umrah.
mm,
And obviously throughout the 2 weeks of being in Umrah, I had my face covered. I was wearing the niqab. It was naturally it was very comfortable. But then we came back to the UK and we were going through the border.
right.
I knew that for some reason when I landed in the UK, there was something that was just worrying me, and I knew that I did not want to wear it anymore. I desperately wanted to take it off. I could feel people staring at me, and I knew that they were gazing at me, but I couldn't tell what it is that they were thinking about me. And on some faces, I could tell that they were looking at me as something to fear, sometimes something to feel disgusted with.
Mm,
Because obviously I stood out. We got through the border and then we came home, and I kept battling with these ideas and these thoughts that I really want to take off. It was this really deep anxiety and stress that was coming over me. And every time I went outside, I would put it on, but it was like internally I was crying because I did not want to keep it on anymore.
yeah.
It was just this fear. And again, it was that time again where Islamophobia was on the rise in a lot of the European countries. So, and funnily enough, when I was telling my mom that I'm a little bit scared to go outside, she said to me, "You don't have anything to be worried about." So it was quite funny because I remember when I first wore it, she was quite conscious and reluctant and telling me, "I think you should take it off. You shouldn't wear it." To coming now, her supporting me and telling me, "No one is going to do anything to you if you place
Mhm,
your trust in Allah,
of course.
and no one is going to touch you. No one is going to say anything to you. And if they do, just ignore it and keep walking, but don't feel like you are pressured to keep it on." And I think I was walking around, I think I had it on for a month after I returned from Umrah. And I think I had that mindset, you know, when someone returns from Hajj Umrah,
Mm-hmm.
you want to keep that sort of, that feeling of spirituality with you, that bonding with Allah and that closeness. And I think one of the ways I thought I would do that was if I start wearing the niqab again and just sort of continue. I was wearing it in Saudi for 2 weeks. I thought it would be very easy to come back here and wear it,
Yeah.
and it wasn't easy at all. And every time I stepped out, I was very conscious and a lot more conscious of people whispering and looking at me, but staring at me in a very obvious way.
Mm.
Um, and then I think after a month, I sort of fought with myself with the idea that I can't I can't wear it anymore. That I need to take it off.
So did you stop wearing it for a while?
Yeah, I stopped wearing it for when I first wore it in college, I wore it for about a year or two, and then I took it off just before I started university,
Okay.
and then I put it back on again when I returned from Umrah,
Okay.
and then after a month of wearing it when I was in Umrah, I took it off again, and this time I took it off and I said, I remember I made this dua and I said, Allah, my intentions are not for any other reason, not to show myself or because I don't want to, because I don't like it anymore. I just said it's because I'm at this moment in time, I'm actually really, really, really scared of wearing it.
Mm.
And that's why I wanted to take it off.
So how was that like experience, like wearing it and then not wearing it, especially you was at university at the time? Do you think, how do you think, because obviously like a lot of sisters, when they start wearing the hijab or they start wearing the niqab, you know, there is this thing in your mind where you're thinking, well, what do other people think? Like, you know, because it's something you're outwardly that you're doing. It's a look, you know.
I
So,
did have that, definitely.
so
I had,
how did you kind of get through that?
I think I found it more weird for myself first.
Mm-hmm.
When I took it off, the first day when I went outside and I didn't have it on anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I remember thinking I seem a lot more visible to people. I feel like I'm standing out more
Mm-hmm.
rather than having it on. And I would keep putting my head down and trying to put my scarf as forward as possible to
Mm.
cover up most of my face.
Yeah.
It took a lot of time to get used to. But alhamdulillah, I had family and friends around me who were always very supportive. It wasn't anything about questioning. And if they did, if they were to ask me how comes I took it off, I would say that I just wasn't comfortable anymore. Or I was going to university and it required me to travel and I wanted to put my safety first.
Mm-hmm.
So all the time around me, I've always had people who were always encouraging me, advising me, and always telling me that it was ultimately my choice and whatever made me feel comfortable at the time.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
But I do remember my mom said to me, and this always stuck with me. She said, "The niqab isn't something that you can play with. It's not something that you wear on and off, on and off. You
Mm.
don't wear it one day and then you don't take it off another day." She said, "Keep it off, and when you feel like you are ready and you are comfortable, then put it on for yourself."
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I did. I kept it off until I was ready again to put it back on again.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. So when did you really feel that you was ready, and how did you know that you was ready as well?
So I was, it was actually, I think about, if I remember, I think 2 or 3 years later, I was in a school setting, and I remember thinking I wanted to do something to create a bit more of a distance between myself and some of the other male colleagues.
Right.
There was a lot of uncomfortable. I was always feeling very uncomfortable, and um, again, the idea just came to me for some reason. If I put the niqab on, that would be enough of a statement that I am trying to create some sort of barrier,
Mm-hmm.
and I am trying to distance myself from you and myself. Um, the idea came to me. I did not even think about it, but I remember one day I left my workplace and I went to one of my local stores
Mm-hmm.
and I bought the niqab, and I thought I'm just going to keep this in my bag, and when I feel ready to wear it, that's when I'm going to wear it, but at least I know I've got one with me.
Mm-hmm. So what was your job at the time?
I was a year 2 teacher.
Okay. Okay, mashallah. Was that just in a
So
regular school or an Islamic
it was
school?
an Islamic school.
Okay, alhamdulillah.
So I bought the niqab and I left it in my bag. And as I made my way back, I thought I'm just going to quickly go into my workplace in my classroom because there were a few books that I had left behind that I needed to tidy up. And I reached the entrance. And before I knew it, I did not think about it. Before I knew it, I took the niqab out and I put it on my head. I put it around my face
Mm-hmm.
and I went inside. And A lot of the staff were there, a lot of the male colleagues were there, and they didn't recognize me, and they asked who I was. And I said, "Oh, it's me, Khadija.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wearing the niqab now." And it was like, it felt like how I was when I was 17 again.
Mm-hmm.
It was the most comfortable feeling. I felt this sense of security and peace coming over me.
Alhamdulillah.
And when I left, I remember as I left, I went home and my mom opened the door and she said to me, "Oh, are you wearing the niqab again?" And I said, I think I am. I said, "I'm not sure, but I think I am." And she said to me, "If you are wearing it this time, make sure you keep it on. If you don't feel comfortable, take it off. Don't feel like you have to commit to it."
Mm-hmm.
And then I went home and I sort of reflected back and thought of what I did, because I knew also it's not something that I can go out one day having it on and the next day taking it off.
Yeah.
But I sat down and I made this dua to Allah and I said, "Allah, please don't test me through the niqab, because if you do, I feel that I will fail and I will take it off,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't ever want to take it off." And I
Alhamdulillah.
just left it at that. And ever since that day, I've been wearing it now for about 7, 8 years. And Alhamdulillah, I can honestly, sincerely say that I have never ever been tested through my niqab.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. So, on that note, would you say that you feel that the niqab is a barrier, and if so, in which sense?
No, not at all. I think if anything, it makes women feel more liberated. It makes us feel that we have a sense of identity. Um, and I really wish that non-Muslims or people who are interested in the niqab would actually approach and be confident enough and brave enough to actually ask us and say, "How is it that this makes us feel?" Because not once did I ever feel that I was inferior, or did I feel that I was powerless, or that I couldn't achieve anything, or that I couldn't do anything. I never felt like my niqab was an obstruction in me doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
And because these thoughts would sort of play with my mind, I eventually wanted to produce a book where it's sort of similar to what you did, sister. So you know how you interview niqabis
Mm-hmm.
and you ask how they feel. So I went around online searching for sisters, Muslim women, who are very successful in what they do. They're mothers, they're single mothers, they're divorcees, they're married. And I wanted to put together a book that highlights what is behind a woman's veil.
Mm-hmm.
So the title of the book is Behind Our Veil. And the theme
Allah.
of it was to celebrate and actually talk about what Muslim women do rather than what they look like, and how we should feel around them. And then I did interviews with them to talk about what the hijab actually meant to them.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was something that they could say to non-Muslims themselves about the hijab, what would it be? And for me, this was a way to also liberate them.
So, have you
And
released that book?
I haven't. I'm in the midst of releasing it.
Okay,
I'm working
okay,
towards
good,
it.
good. That's because we need books like this, sister. Really, it's important. Allah Mubarak. Really.
Inshallah, I mean, I've sort of piled it together. I mean, and the idea sort of came when that comment was thrown that we look like letterbox.
Mm,
So when you feel powerless and you know that there's something you need to do, be the change. Instead of sitting there and thinking, "Oh, something needs to change," I thought, let me actively do something, because I didn't like the comments. I didn't like what we were being made to represent as. I didn't like what we were being associated with. So I thought, let me put a book together and actually give the voice to Muslim women and let them tell the general public how it is, how they feel, what the hijab means to them, and what it is that they do, and break that misconception that we are uneducated, illiterate, we sit at home and we do nothing. So I was going out and finding women who were authors, illustrators, writers. They were in art, they had their own businesses, they had their own clothing line. And I thought this is actually one of my ways to combat that sort of belief and that misconception towards us.
alhamdulillah, mashallah. I think that's a beautiful idea, and I can't wait to see the release of that book, inshallah, and
Inshallah, please
get a
make
copy.
dua for me. It just seems to be taking its time. But
Allah make
inshallah,
it
Allah brings it
easy.
together. So I thought, do you know what? something has to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And it can't be one of the, because when the problem is at your doorstep, you can't shy away from it and
Exactly.
say, I can't do anything about it. This is not my problem. It is.
Exactly.
And even if it requires something like a book, I mean, it's very light-hearted, it's very informative. Who doesn't like books? Do you
Mm-hmm.
see? And it's not something that's very thrown in your face, and it's not very political also. It's just very simple and easy, and talking to women about themselves and what they do and the hijab. And I thought, I mean, I started this back in 2017, and
Alhamdulillah.
it's just slowly been dragging. And I keep telling myself I need to prioritize it and get back to it and do something with it. So, inshallah, I hope so.
Inshallah. Inshallah. Definitely. Just keep going. Just keep going. That's all I can
Inshallah.
say, sister. Allah make it easy for you. I mean,
I mean,
alhamdulillah. So, have you met any sisters? And speaking of women's liberation and freedom and independence, have you met any sisters who've been forced into wearing the niqab? Because that's something that we're constantly told.
always comes up that, yep, that's one of the main arguments that we're forced. Um, I'm just gonna say this. I mean, I know that there are people who are forced, and I know that around the world that there are so many women who are probably forced to wear the hijab and to cover up. But I personally have not come across a single person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, every person that I've spoken to, even through the book, funnily enough, I have sisters who are Muslim, and they don't observe the hijab,
Mm-hmm.
and they say to me that no one has forced me, no one tells me to cover up. It's completely my decision whether I want to or not. I know sisters who wear the niqab, and if I ask them, how did you come to wearing it, not once do they mention that my father forced me, or my husband forced me, or my brothers forced me. It's simply not there.
Yeah.
Similarly with the hijab, I know girls who have worn it and that have taken it off, or girls who never wore it, and with time, after a couple of years, they have worn it. But nowhere have I met anyone that says to me, I've been forced to wear it, this is why I'm wearing it.
Mm.
I've been threatened to wear it, that's why I'm wearing it. It's more so, this was my choice. I came to this choice by myself. This is something that I wanted to do. In fact, if anything, I've heard of people telling me that their parents have told them not to wear it and to take it
Yeah,
off.
I've seen that a lot as well, especially in the
I've never,
UK.
that's, yeah, I mean, I've never, it's actually
And
surprising that the general media think that we're forced to, because I keep wanting to say it's actually the opposite. We are
it
told
is,
not to wear it,
yeah,
even by family members who tell us, I think it would be best if you take it off.
yeah. And I find that really sad, to be honest. And I personally think that, especially for young girls who have
Yeah.
reached the age of puberty, and then their parents, their mothers, even mothers who are
Mm.
wearing the hijab, sometimes wearing the niqab, turn around and say to them, well, you don't need to wear the hijab yet. SubhanAllah, what are
Yeah,
you
yeah.
doing? Because
SubhanAllah.
it's you're basically giving your daughter permission to sin against Allah and to
Yeah.
disobey Allah. And I don't understand this kind of mentality, and it's just like, even if you have fears yourself, um, about the hijab, it still doesn't
Mm,
make sense to me. If you're already wearing the hijab or even the niqab yourself, why would you
mm,
not encourage your daughter to wear it? Because
yeah.
children, your daughter should be encouraged, and your son should be educated about the hijab as well. There is hijab for men, but I mean, even in the sense of the hijab for the Muslim women, because
Yeah.
the boys should be taught that the hijab is something to be respected, and they should
Yeah.
be taught that they should respect women in general anyways,
Mm,
but
mm,
the boys need to understand that the hijab isn't something to oppress the woman. That's not
yeah,
what it is.
exactly.
So they need to be having that level of education, as well as the daughters. So I don't understand when Muslim mothers, as I said, the ones who, especially if a Muslim mother is not wearing the hijab herself, you can understand, like, it's hard for
Yeah.
her to even say, oh, to her daughter, like, I think you should wear it, because if she's not doing
Yeah.
it herself, it's not practical. It wouldn't make sense.
Yeah,
But as a
exactly.
woman who's wearing the hijab, and then you say to your teenage daughter who's reached the age of puberty, oh, you don't need to wear it, or take your time, and no, I just don't agree with it, because
Mm,
you're giving her permission to disobey Allah. And when will she then, if you don't encourage her, when will she then feel that confidence to even put it on? Because you're putting it in her mind that it's something, um, that she should be afraid of doing.
yeah.
And maybe
I
she
think,
maybe she wouldn't have had that in her mind before you even said that, but because you're trying to feed this idea, because I see this a lot. Mothers, they're wearing hijab, and the
mm,
father is the one, he'll come and say, well, no, I don't want my daughters wearing the hijab. But why is your wife wearing it then?
yeah.
you know, and but it's like
Very.
the fathers are scared that, oh, their daughters are going to be like attacked, or they kind of got this idea that they want their daughters to blend into the Western society. But if your daughter brings a boy home and says this is her boyfriend, will you be happy with that?
No, of
That's
course not.
what I would ask. Do you know what I mean? Because you're letting your daughters like kind of have this life where they're constantly on display. And obviously I don't believe that a girl should be forced
Mm.
to wear the hijab or anything like that, but a lot of girls are being forced not to wear it. They're not,
And
you
I
know,
think
so
exactly, I think with all of that, with especially because I have this conversation at times also. I mean, I've got younger siblings, and I think what it comes down to is parenting from a young age.
definitely.
It's if the parenting is not done correctly, then you will find yourself in these sort of situations and problems. I mean, we're taught to teach our children from a young age,
Exactly.
and if you do not teach them something from a young age, how on earth can you expect them to adhere to something when they're teenagers?
Mm-hmm.
Because they won't. Um, and if it is something like the hijab, it's also be the role model, have that good role model behavior where your children can see what is the correct way of wearing hijab, and not also the correct way but the beauty of wearing hijab.
Exactly.
Because there are a lot of teenage girls who they probably do want to wear it, but there is so much influence, especially coming from social media, where the hijab has been altered and changed,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been dressed in a manner where it sort of it's east meets west.
Yes, it
So we
is.
have the hijab, but there's a bit of hair showing here,
Yeah.
or we wear the hijab but the chest isn't covered, or we wear the hijab but it's up very high. You know the camel hump,
Yeah.
that big
Yeah.
thing on the back. So it's very much of I'll wear the hijab but I'll compromise.
Yeah,
And I
basically.
think that's where a lot of girls face the problem,
Mm.
feel the problem, where I want to take the step, but I will take the step, but mix it with other things also. And I think for me, for me personally, that's one of my issues. It's you either wear it properly, completely the way we were told to wear it, or you don't mock it.
Exactly. I mean, and I
Hijab is not
think
something to be mocked with.
exactly, and I think that obviously, even like what you've mentioned, there's a lack of confidence that
Mm,
goes with this kind of watering down of the hijab or what it is.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's two things: a lack of confidence and a lack of understanding of what the hijab actually is. So those
And
two
what it
things put
represents
together,
also.
exactly. So those three things then like put together, you know, you
Mm,
need to understand what is the hijab. The hijab is not something that is your culture specifically.
mm,
Okay, you
yeah,
might come from a Muslim background, but the way that your cultural, you know, background maybe wears the hijab, it's possibly might not even be a correct hijab.
yeah,
Okay, so that's one possibility, and it's your responsibility as an individual Muslim, whether male or female, to look at your obligatory your obligations in Islam, what Allah has
mm,
commanded you, and find that for yourself, so that you understand
yeah,
why it is you're doing something, not just doing it because this makes you feel more Muslim. Okay, because you know
yeah,
there's so many things that we can say make us feel more Muslim or not. So you know everybody's perception is going to change, like depending on who they are, where they come from. And
yeah,
I think there's a burden, you know, on those young women who have been raised not, you know, wearing the hijab on a regular basis, not having that kind of upbringing, like you said, like the younger the girl is, if she starts wearing the
mm,
hijab from a young age, and I'm sure these French politicians that have recently put this ban in about banning any girl under the age of 18
18.
from wearing the hijab. They're doing this on purpose. They know what they're doing, because the reality is, any girl in this country, yeah, in the UK, who hasn't been
Mm,
wearing the hijab from a young age, when she gets to 18, do you think it's easier for her to start wearing the hijab? Of course it isn't.
definitely not.
She
Of course
doesn't
it's
feel
not.
comfortable, just even on a practical level. She doesn't feel, you know, she put on a scarf. I remember when I became Muslim, I was how
Mm.
old was I? I think 18, 19 years old. When I put the hijab on for the first time, I just felt ugly. I really felt ugly, and I just
Oh,
thought like in my heart, I even, I don't want to say I hated it, but I felt just ugly. Okay, and I was
yeah,
just thinking, but at the same time, I knew that the hijab was obligatory. Okay,
yeah.
I understood that and I accepted it. So I just looked at them and I just thought to myself, oh my God, you look so rubbish, but this is going to be your life right now. So just get on with it. You know, I kind of just told myself that. So I can understand when these young girls, teenagers who are at their prime in beauty, and you know, the fashion is attracting them, they want to look nice,
Yeah,
that at
definitely.
that age they're thrown into the world, you know, mixing with the opposite gender,
Gender.
whether it's in university, college, you know, or they've got a job, for example, and they're
Mm,
just wearing Western clothes,
yeah.
you know. And I don't have an issue with Western clothes per se, but the fashion that goes along with it, like if you're not observing hijab
Mm,
at any level, or even if you are observing the hijab, fashion has an impact on every woman. Okay, we
of course,
all
it
like to
definitely
look
does.
nice. We all want to be attractive. Okay, that's the
Yeah,
reality. Okay, even us niqabis that cover up ourselves when we're in our house, we don't wear niqab in our house. We're dressing to try to, you know, look nice and reflect our
yeah,
personality, and you know, it's part of our being as females. We want to look nice and we want to feel good. So this is
yeah.
something normal. So can you imagine that girl who has not been raised wearing the hijab,
In that
even
way, how hard it would be. It would be.
exactly. And it's like, as a parent, this is what you've done to your daughter. You've put her in that position that she doesn't even feel comfortable wearing it. Like, even if she doesn't understand why she should wear the hijab, on a practical level, she doesn't, it's not something she embraces as part of even her culture or her Islamic identity, because you've
Mm,
taken that away from her, because you've not made her accustomed to wearing it. It's not something that's normal for her. It's something alien. So when she decides that she wants to put it on, she has to go through this whole struggle of like identity, and
crisis,
you know, how,
and
yeah,
where do I fit
how she
in?
looks, and is it
Yeah.
really her, you know, trying to like come to terms with how she, you know, is she still an individual person if she's wearing it? Because you know, I had those anxieties when I started wearing it. I thought to myself, like, oh, like, you know, people are going to see me and they're just going to think I'm maybe like one of these Somali sisters, or I don't know, like, you know, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But
Because you,
sister, how long have you been wearing the niqab for?
it's how long, 12 years I think now.
And how did you find it at first?
Oh, well, to be honest, I loved the niqab from the beginning. When I became Muslim,
Yeah,
the niqab, I
yeah,
really loved the idea of the niqab. And when I used to see sisters in it, I thought it was just wow, like amazing. So I liked the idea of the niqab. But when I put the hijab itself, just the
mm,
headscarf, I just didn't.
yeah,
I didn't like it. I just thought I looked ugly, as I said. But I accepted it.
yeah,
I knew it was something necessary, but because of my situation at the time, I didn't feel that I could, I didn't feel I had the confidence to put the full niqab and a abaya and everything
yeah,
on straight away.
yeah,
Although, to be honest, I wish that if somebody had given me one, I would have been
yeah.
happy, because I think I would have worn it a lot earlier, but it wasn't my situation. Alhamdulillah, qadar Allah.
Oh,
Um,
okay,
because yeah, I couldn't afford to buy like a buyer and all these different things. So it was one of those
okay.
things where I just kind of started out wearing layers of clothing, and you know, you're just trying to
Yeah,
wear
yeah,
whatever you've got and trying to cover everything that you're supposed to be covering, but maybe some
yeah,
place is too tight and the other place might be, you know, you trying to layer as much as possible. And that's very uncomfortable actually. Having to wear lots of clothes in order to fulfill the conditions of the hijab is more
yeah,
difficult than just having your jilbab or your abaya, which does everything in one, you know. So
yeah, exactly.
that's why, like, you know, it's taken years, but alhamdulillah, I've got to that level where now, yeah, I wear the abaya on a regular basis, or even now I've just started to wear the jilbab, because jilbab is a lot more fabric to wear. um
Yeah,
and you know, sometimes on a practical level you might feel that it's like, you know, a bit difficult to like deal with, but I've started to wear it recently because I find that it is very comfortable. But um if you're like getting in and out of a car, it might be a bit awkward, and you know, there's certain things, circumstances where you might find that, you know, you have to adjust to kind of wearing it. I know obviously there's a lot of
yeah,
sisters, they still do everything while they're wearing it, but it's something you know, these things take time to build up to. So that's what I'm saying. It's not an
yeah.
overnight thing. And if you raise your daughters from a young age, they're used to wearing the abaya, they're used to wearing the hijab, even if they don't wear it all the time, they're already
It's
used to
that
it.
thing, something that becomes a habit just simply becomes the
Exactly.
norm.
It's something, because we need to train our daughters to see it as something normal. It's not something,
Yeah,
oh, this extra thing that you do because, oh, you're pious one day. No, it's not
yeah,
like that. It's not going to make you pious because you wear it. It's an obligation for you to wear the correct hijab. And inshallah, you know, Allah will take care of your heart, and continue to lead you to, you know, what is correct, and you know, the straight path, and you know, you'll build up from there. But it's not you wait to think that you're pious, because none of us can ever think that. Do you know what I mean?
No, and none of us can ever be perfect believers to think
Exactly.
that we will reach that pinnacle and then we will adhere to the Islamic dress code. It simply doesn't work like that.
Yeah,
And I think
subhanallah.
that's what the problem is, where we have a lot of the youth where they think I will reach that level of piety and righteousness and then I will be willing to wear it. You
SubhanAllah. And
know?
this is one of the things, like, often where I think when you wear the niqab, a lot of the time sisters kind of have this, like you said, like, you know, people think
Yeah,
you're on this, like, you know, you're like on a level of piety where they feel that they can't approach you, but they don't see the process that you went to get to that point where you actually started wearing it. Not everybody just put the niqab
exactly,
on like just like
exactly.
that. You know, you've had your journey to, maybe you was wearing the tight jeans and the long tops, or
Mm.
the, you know, not wearing hijab. You know, everybody's got their own different story. You know,
And everyone's
that's why
got
I
their
started the
own,
podcast as well, because I knew that,
yeah.
you know, everybody's journey to the niqab is different.
And ultimately, everyone has their own path that they are walking and building and creating to get to where they need to. But it's that thing of when we think that I will do certain things, I will do certain actions when I feel spiritually ready,
Yeah,
or when I
completely.
feel like I've reached that sweetness of iman, as I like to call it. But and it just, and the thing is, it doesn't come
Yeah,
because
subhanallah.
you may reach it, but you eventually come back down, and then it becomes that struggle of trying to stay on the right path and trying to just simply trying to do your best, and that's all it is.
Yeah, subhanallah. And that's what it is. At the end of the day, we cannot be at the same level all the time.
Yeah.
You know, it's a constant thing. You have to always be trying every day, struggling, you know. So, and everybody
That,
has their
yeah,
own
and
individual
I think with
struggles.
mine, when I was wearing the niqab, I think that was one of the things. I mean, after being comfortable wearing with it, I think one of the next things I really battled with was, okay, now I look a certain way, I don't feel a certain way internally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was that thing of, okay, so I'm having, my iman is very low at the moment now. Do I take the niqab off because I don't feel as spiritual as I look,
Mm,
or do I continue and push through and keep trying harder? In the last couple of years, actually, I had to completely get rid of that mindset that I may have moments where I have low iman and I don't feel as spiritually connected as I may do on other days. But that doesn't mean I take everything off completely.
exactly.
It doesn't mean that I won't reach that level and that bonding again, because it will come. It's just about me doing the internal work and me doing the acts of worship to come closer, not adding more layers of clothing onto myself,
Hmm.
thinking that that is what will get me there.
Exactly.
It's a
Because
step
what is
there.
looking
It
spiritual?
means,
What does it mean to look spiritual anyway? You know, these are the kind of misconceptions that we have about physical
yeah, and I think
appearances.
us amongst ourselves also. I mean, yes, non-Muslims have that conception also, that someone who dresses a certain way, they must be a lot more spiritual. But us amongst Muslims ourselves, we have that also. I mean, we naturally tend to look at someone who dresses in a certain way. We put them on a higher level than everyone
Yeah,
else.
and
When
it's not
reality is,
correct.
we are all on the same journey, all going through the same battles, all
Hmm.
trying to find our way on how to bond with Allah and how to get closer to Allah.
Yeah, subhanallah. So, mashallah, sister, we've had a really long and good discussion here. But I'll ask
Think
you,
that.
what does the niqab mean to you?
Um, I think it to me, it means it's a sense of belonging, this
Mashallah.
feeling of being at home, feeling like there isn't anything that I can't do.
Alhamdulillah.
And every time, majority, 99% of the time, every time I've worn it and I've worn it with the correct intention, I've always felt at ease. I've never felt like I was inferior to anyone.
Alhamdulillah.
Um, I was very proud that I was a Muslim. I was very proud that I was wearing the niqab also. And I think sometimes it's very disheartening when you hear things that is completely different to what you actually feel.
Mm-hmm.
That you should feel a certain way. You should feel like you are in need of being liberated and given your independence and given your freedom. And one of the ways to do that is to ban the hijab and ban the niqab and so forth, when in actuality that is not what it feels like at all. And I come from a place where I've had family or relatives advising me from a good place, from a good heart, telling me that it would be best to take it off, and I've stuck through and I said no.
SubhanAllah.
When I feel like I need to take off, or if I feel like I need to take it off, then I will. And it just goes to show that we are not a person, we are not, and it is not something, an action that is forced upon us by the male figures in our lives or by anyone.
SubhanAllah.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. So what would you advise other sisters who would like to wear the niqab, but they're just kind of at the beginning of their journey and they're thinking or contemplating wearing it?
To talk to Allah, to talk to Him, and to make sincere dua, and always renew your intentions and think why you want to wear it and for what reasons you are wearing it. And then when you know your intentions, when you know for yourself by what for what reasons you are wearing it, make the intentions and then just do it.
Alhamdulillah.
Don't have that fear that once you stick to it, you need to have everything in your life in order. Your salah needs to come in order, your Quran recitation needs to come in order, you need to have this, you need to have that, because that simply won't happen. Everything always starts with sincere intentions, and then du'as, and then placing your tawakkul in Allah, and then carrying through.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much, sister, for giving so much of your time today. I've really enjoyed my discussion with you, mashallah.
Barakallahu feek.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair, and I will wish you a good day, inshallah. Have a blessed rest of your
Inshallah.
day. Assalamu alaikum
Barakallahu feek.
wa
Thank you, sister.
rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.